All right. So excited to have everyone. Just want to make sure that I have my notes up. Um, again, if you have any questions, throw them in chat or you can come off mute. I don't care either way. It doesn't bother me. I just want to make sure that you have everything that you need. But today, everyone, we're going to be talking about grief that happens in trauma. So I want to make it really clear that this is not grief as related to losing someone or that's connected to that grief. We're really going to be talking about a different kind of grief, and this is the grief that trauma creates. And it's not talked about very often, if ever, to be honest, because I don't know why. And it should be because I feel like it's a really important proponent to healing and understanding the trauma healing process. And it's one that often is overlooked. And I feel like when it's overlooked, when the person is going through that healing and processing that trauma and they're in this stage, backsliding can happen if awareness isn't brought to what's happening and it's this grief. So a lot of times when we talk about trauma grief, it's coming from, usually we start processing it and we think about what we should have had received. We think about the things that we never received. We also start blaming ourselves, going, well, why didn't I do something to stop this? Maybe I should have made better choices. There's anger that's involved in that, where you can be angry about, the perpetrator of who created that trauma. You can get angry about yourself. So, as you can already see, if you look at the cycle of grief, you really do cycle through these, and you need to. Oftentimes, we will shame ourselves or make ourselves feel guilty or try to pull us out of the victim mode when we're in this grief cycle. And that's usually when the backsliding starts to happen because we're not allowing our brain and our nervous system to properly cycle through this grief that we're needing. So, what you're going to find today is that this workshop is educational. It's not therapy. You're not expected to share personal stories or process emotions out loud. That's not what this is designed for. Um, it's really designed to just bring awareness so that if you are going through a process and you are healing through it and you hit this part of that process, you understand what it is and you give yourself permission to move through it and to feel what you need to feel and to be angry, honestly, to feel shame, to go through that guilt and know that it's okay and there's nothing wrong with you and you're not playing a victim. You're moving through grief. So, during this time, at any time, if you notice your body feeling activated, overwhelmed, or disconnected, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that your nervous system is responding to the information that's coming forward. And I really want to move through this slowly and intentionally today, just to honor how your nervous system might react. So if you do feel activated or you need to turn the volume down or you need to get up and walk around or you need to leave the room, please do that. It is okay. I'm all about honoring your nervous system and where it's at and what it's needing and not overriding what it's needing, to really connect with it and say, you know what? I need to take a moment. I need to go outside for 10, 15 minutes. Do it. So I'm all about honoring your nervous system. So before we go any further, I just kind of want to take about 30 seconds to just orient. So wherever you are, what I want you to do is I just want you to just gently look around your room and just let your eyes just land on a few neutral or even just some pleasant objects. And then I just want you to notice where you're sitting. And I just want you to notice that you're here now and that this moment is different from anything that has happened in the past. So I just want you to take some time to do that. I'm going to do that now. I'm a verbal processor, so as I do it, I like to say things out loud. But yeah, so my pleasant things is a picture of me and my son when he was little. My son again. My beautiful picture that my friend gave me of butterflies. And I'm also noticing the window that I have here where I can look out and see what's going on. For me, that's really important to be able to know what my situational awareness is. And then, of course, my dog that just came up and bumped my feet. So, this is a tool that you can use when you do feel like your nervous system is kind of starting to amp up. When we take even 30 seconds to orient to the room, we actually can start to calm down. Um, the other piece of this is also orienting to like your exits. Like I mentioned, my window. To me, that's an exit, but it also gives me an opportunity to see what's going on outside. You see my screen here. That to me is also an exit. When we tell the brain that there's exits and we can get out and away from things, the body will also start to calm down. The brain is always designed to scan for threats or it makes predictions about what could be a threat. So when we use that orientation with our eyes to look around, it can calm our system. And so that's just kind of a little tool that I like to give. You'll notice I'll give you tools throughout this because I think it's really important for people to have those in their pocket. All right. So, as we begin, we're going to talk about how trauma does create grief. So, when we talk about trauma, we often focus on what happened. But we also need to recognize that trauma also creates loss that is very similar to losing someone. It can be loss of safety, loss of support, loss of protection. It can be loss of being seen or met. It's also loss of parts of ourselves that we had to shut down to survive. And I think besides the safety and the support and the protection, which is really important for our nervous system, but that last part of having to shut down parts of ourselves just to survive is a really big one. So when we are moving through grief that is created by trauma, when grief comes up, it is oftentimes those parts that are starting to come back online. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, and what happens is it does create that cycle of grief because we're not really understanding what's happening to it, and and those parts are really just trying to get our attention. So for many people, grief doesn't show up during the traumatic experience itself. Um, it's during trauma, what happens is the nervous system is focused on strictly on survival, nothing else. It is focusing on how to adapt, it's bracing itself, it can even numb itself or become completely disconnected and dissociated. All of that are survival techniques. We won't ever be able to stop those things from happening because inside our brain, we have a survival part of our brain and we need it. We need it to survive. Maybe not back like when we were cavemen, but it can be as simple as, you don't see the car coming, you step out in the street. Your brain is going to notice that and it's going to create those survival techniques. It may brace itself for impact depending on how close the car is. It may adapt by having you step back on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of things that we do need. So we don't ever want to shut off that part of our system, but know that during trauma, those things are really important. And there's a lot of somatic things that we do in the body that we don't even notice that happens when we go into survival response. And that's for another time to talk about. But just to let you know, grief is not when the trauma occurs. So, also too, as I was mentioning earlier, we oftentimes don't create space for grief. And so grief tends to arrive later in the processing. It's when the nervous system really has had enough safety for us to take a step back and look and recognize that something was missing that we didn't get that created that survival or that trauma response, or something that was way too much for us that we kept being exposed to. It also is, sometimes we sit there and go, man, I really should not have handled this alone. Like, where was my support? So all of that is embedded in grief. And oftentimes, when we start to reach this realization of that, it can be really painful. But also know that that pain is information, it is feedback that is also very meaningful to the healing process. So, this type of grief isn't about wishing that the past was different. We know that we cannot change the past. What we can do is change the here and now and as we move forward. But it really is about acknowledging the truth of what was lost in the past so that the body no longer has to hold on to it silently. Because that's what the body does. When we have a traumatic incident, the body grabs onto it and it stores it and it packs it away. And then when starts to feel safe enough, it starts to bring it to the surface. And that's when the healing starts to happen. Um, Even when it gets into the awareness, healing starts to trigger to happen. But it's when the body feels safe enough to fully start to release it. A lot of times, this is when that grief steps in. And we've been taught a lot, and I'm going to say in all healing modalities, when we talk about like treatment, therapy, energy work, whatever it is that you're working in, that when that grief starts to come up, oftentimes you'll hear people go, well, yeah, just allow yourself to feel it. Well, we need to feel it, and we also need to have the awareness of it. Or when it comes up, what you'll see is somebody will try to shift into something that's I hate to say, do positive affirmations. Don't You need to think more positively about what's going on. You need to see this, you need to see that. And instead of saying, you know what, you're grieving, it's okay, be angry. It's okay, you can experience that shame. And what's really happening as you're doing that, because one of the worries oftentimes people say is, well, what if I hold on to that? Well, you're actually not going to, because when you experience it and you allow it to and you when you bring it to the surface and you experience it, it's in that experience that the body is actually releasing it. So you're not going to hold on to it. So allow it to come up and allow it to be released. Okay. So I'm going to talk some more about why grief does emerge during healing. And one of the most confusing parts of trauma healing is that people often feel worse before they feel better. And and I don't know about you, but I don't want to feel worse before I feel better. At least that was my mindset, but it has to happen. And that worst part that happens is that grief that we have to move through. So usually when people are healing or they're going through treatment or therapy or whatever it is that of their choice of what they're using to move through this trauma, when they start to feel really bad, they think that what they're doing isn't working. And then what happens is they pull out of it or they quit. But you'll go through layers where you're like, I'm moving along, I'm doing okay, I'm healing, and then it's like you feel worse. And then when you move through that grief, you feel good, and then you kind of hit that grief again. You'll go through several cycles of that. But I always encourage people that in those moments of when you're doing treatment, healing, whatever it is, hang in there, because your body is actually releasing, and it's releasing through grief. So, as the nervous system begins to regulate, awareness starts to increase. And when survival really starts to soften, our perception also begins to expand. And that's when the grief starts to show up. So, people will often say things like, I thought I was healed and now it's coming up again. Or, why am I grieving now when it happened so many years ago? And the answer to this is very simple, but I want you to know it's really important. Your system at the time when, it could have been when you were going through that process and you're, with the comment of, I thought I was healing, or, it happened so long ago. Your system couldn't afford to feel what you're going to feel when you go through grief at that time. I always use this example, and it's going to sound very extreme, but it is very important. So, a good example is like a rape victim. A rape victim at the time, actually, the entire mind, body, and soul shuts down. And the reason being is because the body is registering that as trauma. Oftentimes what you'll find is that when the victim of that experience goes to be, I'm gonna, truthfully, when law enforcement goes to talk to them about it, it's very spotty, and it seems like their story is very inconsistent. It isn't. The body shuts the brain off so that it doesn't go into shock. So when we have really, really traumatic events and you stop and you're like, I can't remember anything. It's very spotty on how I remember it. Know that that is your brain keeping you safe. Your body is literally keeping you safe because so much shock can actually, I mean, physiologically can kill you. And so we have this built-in mechanism where the mind, body, and soul truly keeps us safe. Now, when we are going through the process of healing trauma and we do reach a sense of safety, the body will then start to want to release it. So that's when that grieving process starts to come up because now you're not in a state where the shock could actually physically kill you. And I know it sounds very extreme, but it's true. That's why we have these built-in mechanisms. I'm telling you, our body, the human body is incredible in the things that it does. So again, when grief is emerging during healing, it really isn't a setback, especially if we focus on the grieving and allow it to go through. It's actually a sign that your nervous system is finally has had enough capacity to notice what happened, and it's ready to let that go. So I just want you to kind of sit with that for a little bit, um, because, again, this is kind of the part that nobody talks about. Or if they do talk about it, they don't put a label on it and say, oh, you're grieving. And I feel like that's really important to have that understanding of what's happening. So, when we talk about healing, as many of you know, it doesn't go in a straight line. We don't start here and end up here. What happens is it goes like this, it goes like this, it goes like this, it shoots back here, it goes forward, it goes up, it goes down, it goes all around, and that's just how healing moves. And but for the most part, what you'll notice, like I said earlier, it'll also kind of move in those waves. So we'll have periods when we're going through healing, periods of stability, then grief hits, which then again can be the hardest part. Then after that grief, we go through an integration process. Then there's more stability, and then another layer, and another layer, and another layer. It doesn't mean that you won't ever get to the root of it because you can, but just understand that it can move through layers. And the layers are dependent on how the body registered the trauma. So I'm going to give this as an example too. Two people can be in a car accident. Somebody years later could still be holding on to the many layers of that trauma because how the body interpreted the threat. The other person may go and get help, and within 3 to 4 months, that car accident no longer has an emotional charge to it. Everybody's body is different and how it interprets trauma and or experiences that happens. So everybody's healing process moves at different rates and speeds. So that's really important to understand. So oftentimes I hear, well, so and so and I had the same experience. They seem to be fine with it. Why can't I get over it? Just know that your system is just unique, and you just may need some more time, and there's not that doesn't mean you're broken. There's nothing wrong with you. And so I bring that up because people can go through grief because of that. It's taking too long. I can't heal this. I'm broken. Joe over there healed this really quick and I can't seem to get through it. We can go through grief in that too, and that's part of the judgment piece of grief. So know that that's also part of it. But it's all normal. Nothing has gone wrong. You're just moving at the capacity that your nervous system can move through this. And that's okay. And I feel like that's really important for us to honor. Um, you know, Again, we're all unique and our nervous systems is unique to us. And it's so important for us to honor what it needs and not judge or, not look at somebody else and where they're at. It's always important to just kind of focus where you're at. Okay. So now that I really moved into the nervous system part of grief, um, I do want to talk about this a little bit more, and I'll try to simplify it as much as I can because it can get pretty complicated, but um, I will make it as simple as I can. But our nervous system, and as I mentioned earlier, is constantly scanning for safety or threat. When it senses threat, it will shift into survival states. When it senses safety, it really allows your nervous system to rest. That's when like connection happens. That's when we're kind of sitting kind of in this energy of awareness. We will feel calm, we'll feel at peace. But mind you, like I mentioned earlier, the nervous system's scanning for threats or safety. The brain is always scanning for threats. So it's an interesting way in which that works. But when we can tell the nervous system, "Hey, I'm okay and I'm sitting in my window of capacity," is what we call it, where we're calm, cool, and collected, right? Everything seems to be very cool and chill. The brain is still scanning, but it's in that ease that we send communication to the brain that says, "I'm doing okay. I'm not in a threatening situation. You don't have to trigger anything, but just know that that's what the brain is looking for." But the nervous system can keep it calm. So grief actually will move through these states. So sometimes grief can look like sadness. And sadness when we're talking about the like polyvagal theory, sadness happens a lot of times when we're in that dorsal vagal response. So it may look like sadness or depression. Um, it can come looking like exhaustion or numbness. It can also look like anger or agitation. Maybe all of a sudden you start to feel very irritated or agitated. It can also look like restlessness or confusion. So, what is happening is it starts to cycle through that polyvagal theory. Um, if you're ever interested in how polyvagal theory works, please feel free to reach out. There's a lot of information online about it, but it can cycle through that. So we can go from hyper arousal where we kind of feel like that anger, that agitation, like I just need to get out of here, or it can kind of look like the freeze response where we might be like a little numb, and then also like the restless confusion or like that sadness. So it can cycle through the hyper and the hypo arousal of our nervous system. So just be aware of that. Um, that's why I always encourage doing nervous system mapping so that you have an understanding how your system works, so that you know where you're at in those survival response, um, in the survival responses, if you're hyper, hypo, or when you're in your window of capacity. So that doesn't mean grief itself is changing. What it means is that the nervous system is expressing it differently depending on its state. So what I'm really meaning is that you're going through grief, and let's say you feel sadness and then you go to anger or agitation. that's still grief. It's just the nervous system is just, it's just trying to express it and get it out in the way that it can. So again, this is where seeing your system through the simple lens of polyvagal can be really helpful. Again, nervous system mapping is a great way to really just understand that. And again, polyvagal isn't like some theory to try to memorize. It's just a way to just kind of understand where your nervous system is to help you normalize your experience and not go from, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. I must be broken. There must be something wrong with me, to the normalization of, well, this is my system and it's working through it and it's okay. So when grief shows up in the system, our system is activated. Even when we're in that dorsal vagal part of sadness, numbness, just kind of feeling like you're just kind of honestly existing through the world, that's still activation. So it can show up when your system shuts down and you're in that dorsal vagal. And then it can show up when you're kind of in between, when you're ricocheting back and forth. So please be aware, oftentimes when we think about nervous system activation, we think that we're in that hyper arousal of that fight, fight, or flee or freeze. That is not necessarily true. Activation is also when we're in the low parts of it, in that sadness, depression, numb, I don't know why I'm here, I don't care about what's going on, that lack of motivation. So it's really important for you to understand that both of that is considered as activation. And again, there's no wrong or right way to grieve. It's just how your system grieves. And however your system grieves is the exact way that you're needing. So it's really important, again, to honor that. Okay, so healing does happen in phases. It doesn't happen again all at once because the nervous system can't integrate everything all at the same time. So it does have to kind of happen in chunks. So, we do call it phases. So, in the first phase of healing, the system needs to build enough safety in order to feel secure enough to heal. So a lot of times, if we don't focus on the safety of our system first and we try to dive into, whether we're doing, energy healing or it could be hypnosis healing, like, um, we like talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, it doesn't matter. If the system doesn't feel safe enough, it doesn't necessarily mean that the healing isn't helping, but the potency of the healing is not going to be as high as when the safety says, okay, I'm ready to receive this. So it's really important for us to have that awareness of how our system works. What are ways that we can calm it down? How can we talk to the nervous system and the brain? There are techniques that we can use to do that. Depending on what stage you are in your trauma, breathing is really important to work on. I always recommend breath work because we take like over like 60,000 breaths every single day. I know we're breathing all the time, but like just to kind of give you an awareness, but it's over like 60,000 breaths that we take. Every time we breathe, we're sending a single signal to the brain, whether it is a threat or not. So, breath work is really, really good to do to let your nervous system tell the brain, I'm safe, I'm under control, there's no threat here. So, breath work is a really good technique. And it needs to be, I hate to say this, like genuine breath work. Because oftentimes, like I've mentioned before, like I've worked in crisis and I go to help somebody breathe and they think they're doing deep breathing. But what this is something to pay attention to is if you go, you're actually not breathing properly. That breath is only going into the chest and then you're breathing it out. And then it can create that hyperventilation feeling in your head where you're literally about ready to pass out. But when I'm talking about breath work, it's the diaphragmatic part of breath work that you really want to try to learn how to master, because your vagus nerve travels all the way down. It actually connects to the front and the back of the diaphragm. So when we learn how to properly do diaphragmic breathing, I just noticed that my hand raised. I don't know why it's doing that, so I apologize if all of a sudden you see my hand go up. Clearly I'm a hand talker, so apologize. It's giving you a high five, but um, to go back to what I was saying, when we learn how to properly breathe, we can use our diaphragm to stimulate the vagus nerve into letting it know that you're safe, that you're not under threat. And your vagus nerve is oftentimes responsible for calming your nervous system down. So again, building safety is key to moving forward in your healing process. So grief again often will show up in that awareness phase. So when we've done enough of that safety work, again, like I said earlier, we start to gain awareness, we start to gain we become more perceptive. And it's in that sweet spot where grief shows up. So as we move through the cycles of grief, and we actually allow ourselves to do that, later as integration happens, the grief starts to settle. And it's not as if it just disappears, but it really is, because it no longer needs to be carried in the same way that it was before. So we actually can get a hold on and manage how that grief, moves through us during that integration process. And then, of course, later there's another layer that can surface as you're going through healing. And again, that doesn't mean that you're back at the beginning. It actually means that you're a lot further along than what we oftentimes think. It just means that your system's just ready for the next layer to be released. And again, doesn't mean that you're broken or anything of that sorts. The cool thing about healing and how it heals in layers, usually in the beginning, it is the toughest because we're learning how to create that safety. We're learning these techniques that help us in our system know that it is safe and that it's okay to move forward in healing. As you move through the healing process, the layers get deeper, but the healing does get easier. And it's because you start to build that awareness and you start to understand how your system works. So you start to really get to those deep nitty-gritty layers. Like I always call it the truths of the trauma, that our body wants us to reveal, but it does start to get easier, and you may start moving through your healing quicker than what you did in the beginning. So for me, grief, the part of grief, um, well, there's a part of grief that I feel that it is very self-empowering. Um, Oftentimes people don't see it as that, but there is a sense of empowerment in grief. So grief doesn't heal through force. Like we can't force it to move through those cycles. We can't force ourselves to just be done with, like, if we're feeling shame or guilt, um, or it like, and it doesn't heal by, again, by us pushing to feel more. It doesn't heal by us reliving or retelling the past either. Oftentimes, when we go into detail about talking about what had happened or reliving or retelling that past, we actually can create a new trauma in the body. So I am a firm believer of, if, retelling, I don't want to, because retelling and reliving are pretty much the same thing. Just retelling enough so that the nervous system activates, and it's that activation in the nervous system that we work with, not what happened to you when you were 10 years old, or when you were 20 or 30, whatever it was. We don't need to retell that story. I'm going to say the key to healing is just the activation in the nervous system itself. Once we get that activation, we can use that to move forward in the healing. We can move that to process through the grieving process itself. So, also, grief doesn't heal by fixing yourself. It really does heal through this self empowerment. So, what does self empowerment mean? It means having choice, it means moving with the pace of your system. It means listening to what your body can handle right now in this moment. Um, I, because healing was so painful for me, I used to come from the standpoint of, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm gonna grind and push through this. I'm really gonna just, put my head down and barrel through this healing. And what I later discovered was that I really was making it worse. That pushing and that grinding and not moving with the pace that my body was saying, this is what we need now, um, actually made my healing process longer. It made it really rough. Um, yeah, it was tough. But once I really listened to my system, once I finally used my education that I'm honestly that I that I went to school for, once I started to follow the pace of my body, my healing became a lot more gentle. It started to move a lot faster. And yeah, like it was just about honoring who I was and what I needed at that time. So if you find yourself pushing and grinding and it becoming really hard, just take a step back and breathe and just ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm needing right now? And it may also be that you're going through that grief cycle. So when we allow grief to just exist without rushing it or suppressing it, our nervous system begins to trust us. And it's in that trust that safety starts to happen. And the nervous system begins to trust that it doesn't have to protect you from whatever that traumatic experience was anymore. And believe me, that is like relief for the body. That is relief for the mind. It does bring a sense of relief for you because our bodies are doing a really good job. Those parts that I was talking about in the beginning are doing something we may not think it's positive because of the way we're experiencing it, but it really is doing something positive in the sense of it's trying to protect us. When we can tell the body or the nervous system or those parts that come up, I'm not in that space anymore. I don't need you to help or protect me in that way. You can actually feel this relief or this release because, that's a lot of years for that part in the body to be playing the protector. And so it gets exhausted as well. So empowerment isn't about how do I control everything. It's really about having um, this gentle, compassionate relationship with yourself, with your body. And it's you telling your body, I'm listening. What is it that you need? And I'm going to honor what you need. And we will work through this together. It is important that mind and body comes together when we're doing healing. And so if you had an experience where dissociation has occurred, somatic work works really good to bring the mind and body back together, because you need those pieces together for them to communicate, for healing to really take hold. And that's also part of that safety, is bringing the mind and body back together so that they can trust each other and listen to each other and work as a team. We want everything in the system working as a team and collaboratively. Okay. So we're gonna do something so that you can kind of have a little bit of an experiential practice. When we're talking about nervous system work, we can talk about all of this theory about it, but it really is an experiential thing. Because when you can experience it, then you can have a better understanding. So, I want to do just a little short practice right now so you can just kind of experience it. It's not going to be a full blown thing, but at least it'll start getting you to knowing and bringing in some awareness about how, how your entire system works, especially when it comes to processing grief. But in this, we're not necessarily processing grief because I don't know which stage you are in that phase, but it's just about supporting your nervous system while grief does exist in there. So know that like grief is existing in there right now. It's just not released. And again, part of the process. So we have a traumatic experience. It's really hard. Grief does get stored during that time. It just doesn't get released during that time. Okay. So I want you to go ahead if you feel comfortable. You can keep your eyes open, but try to do like a very soft gaze, or you can close them. It doesn't matter. Any way that is comfortable to you and feels good and safe to you. Know that anytime that we're doing this, if it is too much, you can stop. Don't push, like I said, don't push through. We just had that conversation of how that's not healthy and can actually create blockages in your healing. But if you're like, this is too much for me, please stop. Give yourself permission to stop. Honor whatever it is that you need. Okay, so again, either the soft gaze or with the eyes closed. What I want you to do is I just want you to bring attention to your body. And I want you to notice where you're supported in your body. That can be the chair beneath you. That could be the ground under your feet. That could be a space in the body. And I just want you to take a moment to just notice this. And I'm going to just kind of do this with you. And I just want you to notice it. And just kind of breathe it in and take it in and just connect with it. And however it's coming up, I don't want you to have any judgment. I just want you to notice it. And that's all that we're doing. And that's part of the awareness process is just noticing and not judging. So now I want you to gently notice if there's any sensation that could be related to grief that might be present today. And this could be a sensation of tightness. You might feel heaviness. Maybe it's numbness. Maybe you might feel sadness. Maybe it's emptiness. Whatever it is, just notice it again. No judgment, no analyzing, just noticing how that sensation is landing in you. And if you have a space that feels safe outside of your body, just focus on that space that's outside of your body and just notice how that space is making you feel inside the body. What sensations is it bringing up? And just sit with that. And that's all I want you to do just for right now. Just slowly sit with it. And it may start to feel a little bit more activated for you. We use the word activating, but really in psychology it means distressing. So you may feel it to be a little bit more distressing. That's okay. That's normal. Just allow it and know you're in a space that's safe. Or maybe it starts to feel a little bit more neutralized. Just allow that. Now, what I want you to do now is I want you to shift your attention and now to something that is neutral or pleasant in your body. Maybe it's your hands. Maybe it's the rhythmic breathing of your breath. Maybe it's just knowing and just feeling the support that you have by someone or something. And I want you to just now switch your attention to that and just fully focus on that pleasant thing. And again, if it's not inside the body, focus on that pleasant thing that might be on the outside of the body. I'm going to tell you that's how mine works. I focus on the outside and then it brings me into the inside. So, my pleasant thing that I always think about is my son. And the moment that I think about him, I can feel the sensation of warmth in my heart space, in my chest. So then I move from my son into the warmth of my chest. And I just want you to notice it wherever it is in your body, just noticing it. That's it. Just connecting with that beautiful part and piece of you. Just sitting. And what we're teaching right now in this moment is you're teaching your nervous system that it can move back and forth through between sensations and that it's not trapped in that one sensation and that it does have choice. It does have voice and autonomy to move to something else. And oftentimes when we override this process, and a lot of times overriding comes during the grief process, when we override this, we teach our nervous system that it has to stay stuck in that activation and that it doesn't have voice, choice, and autonomy to move to something that is more pleasant. So that's what we're teaching our system right now. So if it feels okay to you, what I want you to do is I want you to go back and forth just a few times. Go back to that grief spot, then back to the neutral, pleasant spot. The grief spot, and then the neutral, pleasant spot. And move back and forth at a pace that feels comfortable for you and that honors your system. And only do as much as it feels okay. Don't force yourself to overdo it. Just allow it to move and flow back and forth. And I'm just going to have you sit with that just for a little bit so you can we're literally training the nervous system that safety can happen in the like within its system. And that's all we're doing. And we're bringing awareness to that system. And I want you to just feel that. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I do want to bring some somatic work into this. And I want you to just, when you go into that place of feeling present, maybe what I want you to do is I want you to just maybe notice what your body's doing, maybe what your arms and your hands are doing, where are they placed. If you notice when I went to my son, I placed it on my heart. That's a somatic movement. That's me bringing it to my heart space. And oftentimes what I do is I rub it. And just rubbing my heart space is a sense of calm for me. This is something I have in my toolbox. Again, the other one, and you probably noticed it as we were moving, there was times that I probably put my hand to my face. Me cupping my face is one. And you can rest your hand on anything, or my trick is I literally stick my arm in my arm, my hand in my armpit, but it gives me a shelf to kind of rest on, and I will just hold my face. There's something about this when I cup my face that just feels so soothing to my system. And I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this because I can feel it, my whole system just sending a message to every cell in my body that this is just so soothing. It's so safe. And just kind of a little story for you. I had to give myself permission to be able to do this because when I was younger, when my body began to feel stressed, especially if I was around my parents and maybe I upset them or something didn't go how it was supposed to go, but I would naturally as a child start to put my hands on my face, and my parents would tell me to take my hands away. Stop blocking your face. Stop trying to cover your mouth. And the way that they labeled that was as deception. And so it took me a really long time because, that that made kind of the wires in my system go, wait a minute, I'm doing this because I need to soothe myself, right? But yet the message that I was getting from my parents was that I was being, I was a liar, I wasn't being truthful, I was being deceptive. But as I began to do this type of work, I realized that when I got into like a really distressing situation, my hand would just automatically come to my face. And when I gave myself permission to allow it to soothe me versus tell me the story that my parents imprinted in my system, in my brain, I realized that this really does soothe me. And maybe in this process, you notice that you rock. Rocking is another self-soothing. Just allow your body to do whatever it needs to do to soothe. And I just want you to take a moment and just make a note of that. This is soothing to my body. This is something I can do when my system starts to rev up. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been doing this for so long that after putting my hands on my face, I'm like, ooh, my whole system is so calm. But these are just little things that we can do, especially during that grieving process where we have those big emotions where we can just soothe ourselves. So if we're feeling shame, it's okay to do that somatic work of soothing ourselves. Another really good soothing technique is to take your fingers like this and put it right here in the center of your brain and like your head, and just allow pressure. Just put gentle pressure there. And in doing that, we're actually massaging the center of the two hemispheres of the brain, and we're allowing new neural connections to open up. And when it creates that sense of calm and safety and soothing, those neural connections can latch onto that, and it will tell your brain, it's literally creating this thing in your brain that says, this helps me, this soothes me, I'm safe when I do this. And so that's just another fun technique to do. I don't use that as much as my face though. My face is like the ultimate for me. Okay. So now that we've done the soothing, what I want you to do, if you can even do it, is go back to that grief part. And then again, if you can, go back and forth between the grief and the neutral. And I just want you to notice how your system has shifted. And this shifting within our system is how integration really happens. It's gentle, it's gradual, and it's with choice, which is so important. And I'll just let you sit there just a little bit longer. And however or whatever you need, just again, just honor it. And if you have voices in your head like I had from my parents that says, "No, this is wrong, you can't do that." I want you to give your system permission to do that. And then when you're ready and hopefully you're all comfy and cozy in the seat that you're in because you now have taught your nervous system something different, something good, something relaxing, something calming today. Just go ahead and you can open your eyes or lift your gaze to come back. And we're just going to come back and we're just going to end this. Just take a deep breath. Yeah. All right. So, as this comes to a close, I really do want to just leave you with this. Just remember, grief showing up does not mean that there is something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you are doing healing correctly or incorrectly. It doesn't mean that you're failing at your healing or what you're doing. It just means your system is remembering what mattered. And that is so important in the healing process when we go through that grief. Grief is not something to rush through. We have to allow it to go through its natural cycle. Again, just as if you were grieving for a loved one that may have passed away, we have to go through the grieving cycle of what we didn't have, what we had too much of. We have to allow it to cycle through. Again, it's about creating a relationship with it rather than treating it as this adversary going, "Oh my gosh, this is so bad. If I feel this, there's something wrong with me. You can't be here." It's allowing yourself to open up the door to allow it to come in. I always talk about grief literally being that it's knocking on your door. It'll continue to knock and it will get louder. If we open the door and allow it to step through that threshold and we just open our arms and hug it and embrace it, that cycle will move so much more gentle. It will we can literally have a relationship with it. And when we're in relationship with it, we can communicate with it. We can talk to it. We can hear it and it will hear us. And that's so important. And if grief continues to surface, just let it be information. That's it. Let it be information, not a problem that you have. It is just information. And that information is so precious and so valuable because it's saying, this is what I need, and I know that you can give this to me if you just allow it in through that door. And I think that the final thing that I really want you to hear today is that you are allowed to heal at your own pace. Don't let somebody rush you. Don't let somebody tell you you have to be at this point at this certain time. Don't let the other person that may have moved through it a lot faster dictate your time for healing. Again, your system is unique. That is the beautiful thing about you is that your system is only yours. It only belongs to you. Nobody else in this world has the exact same system as you. When we take the time to get to know it and allow it to move at whatever pace it needs to, we are literally telling it, "I trust you. You are safe here within me." And the collaboration between the healing and who you are really starts to work. It almost becomes like this symphony, this really like harmonious symphony. And really, what that really is known as is coherence. You're bringing your system and living in coherence with who you are meant to be, with who you are. And part of that process is the healing process. It's allowing yourself to go through grief. It's allowing yourself that ability to, when you need it, to soothe yourself and tell yourself, I'm calm, I'm safe, it's okay. So I really hope that this was helpful for you in understanding there is a lot, it truly is a lot more to the grieving process. There is a lot to the healing process in general, but don't ever let it overwhelm you. Just take it piece by piece by piece at a pace that works for you. And I'm going to tell you, you will get there even if you're struggling with it now. Don't judge yourself. Just know that that is part of the process. You are getting there. You are moving at a pace that is for you, and that is all that matters. And so, a huge thank you to to you, Michelle, that showed up today, to everybody else that will be watching this replay that signed up. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you. Thank you for listening. And most importantly, I just want to say thank you for honoring your nervous system today because that's so important. So, thank you. And I'll also send links if you want to try just a 15-minute nervous system orientation. I'm more than happy to do that for you. I'll also send you the links to my website and my programs if you guys are interested in that. It's totally up to what your nervous system wants. Again, always honoring you and your system. All right. Thank you, everyone.